Hey, welcome into the Fantasy Headliners, and for this episode today, we're going to be talking about the top 12 quarterbacks for the 2019 fantasy football season, some pre-draft, post-free agency rankings here, some updated rankings to get you up to speed on what we're thinking about the top 12 players right now. Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode. Please, if you have not hit that subscribe button yet, do so today to become a part of Headliner Nation, and if you become a part of Headliner Nation today, make sure you let us know in the comments below so we can personally welcome you. Make sure you hit that like button as well, and if you have any questions or comments, leave those below. We're one of the most interactive channels here on YouTube. We will get back to you, we will respond, we will interact, and we will help you to the best of our ability. Let's jump into these rankings here real quick, and I think number one is no surprise to anybody. Maybe, is Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs. And there's some interesting narratives going on right now when it comes to Tyreek Hill, and we're not going to dive too far into that. This is not the time or the place. The only thing that we know right now is not much. There's a lot of reports out there. He may have done something. He may not have done something. With all that being said, right now I am moving forward in my rankings as if Tyreek Hill is playing the entire 2019 season with no suspensions. Until I hear otherwise, that is the assumption that I'm going to operate under. With that being said, I don't care that Patrick Mahomes doesn't have Kareem Hunt to begin the season like he did last year. The backfield there in Kansas City will be just fine. Patrick Mahomes will be just fine. The wide receivers will be fine. Travis Kelce will be fine. Everything will be fine as of right now. That's why I'm going to leave him as my QB1 for the 2019 season. Over 50 touchdowns, over 5,000 passing yards last year. Does he do exactly that in 2019? I'm not going to hold him to those type of standards, but with that offense there and with his abilities, there is no doubt in my mind that he will finish as the QB1 in 2019. After missing the entire 2018 season, Andrew Luck came back with a bang last year, and even though a lot of people took notice, it was still an underrated season to many because he was overshadowed by guys like Patrick Mahomes. So Andrew Luck is going to be my QB2 headed into 2019. Even though I'm not a fan of Devin Funchess for fantasy football purposes, and he's not a guy that I'll buy into too much, I still think he helps Andrew Luck. I think to have another weapon over there, even if it's a guy that's mostly a red zone target, helps him, helps T.Y. Hilton. A healthy run game this year, too. If for some reason Marlon Mack can stay healthy and play an entire 16 games, Nyheim Hines and Jordan Wilkins also there, I think that's an extremely underrated tandem there in the backfield in Indianapolis. All of those things combined, I like them a lot heading into 2019. That's going to be a prolific offense, and it could be an offense in which Andrew Luck builds on his numbers from last season. 39 touchdown passes, 4,593 yards. Both of these things were number two in terms of career high, his second highest totals in a season. 15 interceptions as well last year. I mean, it was an all-around just excellent performance from the Indianapolis Colts, and they're only going to be getting better. And don't worry, it doesn't matter that they didn't sign Le'Veon Bell like a lot of people wanted them to. This is still going to be a very good offense, and an offense that's going to score a lot of points. And at the helm of that offense will be Andrew Luck. The Cleveland Browns were already expected to be better in 2019 than they were last season, and many people also believed Baker Mayfield was headed for a much better season as well, which is saying a lot considering he set a rookie touchdown passing record last season, but everybody was on that Cleveland Browns hype train. Well, when you add Odell Beckham Jr., it goes to prolific heights at that point, and that's why Baker Mayfield is going to come in at number 3 for me, because that offense is going to be incredible. I know a lot of people are still looking at it saying, they have a lot of personalities, I don't know. But I know, I feel it, that this is going to be an offense that is going to be fun to watch all season long. Last year, Baker Mayfield didn't even really have that number one wide receiver type player. I love Jarvis Landry, do not get me wrong, but he is not really a wide receiver one type of player. He's put up numbers close to that before, but still, he isn't that guy that scares every single offense that you have to always make sure that could potentially pull double coverage, that can beat you deep, can beat you. I mean, he's just not the same player as Odell Beckham Jr., and I don't mean any disrespect to Jarvis Landry. Again, I love Jarvis Landry, but Odell Beckham Jr. with Jarvis Landry, Antonio Callaway still on the outside there, could be a deep play threat. You have David Njoku, and don't forget about those running backs either. Nick Chubb is going to have an excellent season. A lot of people are scared off because of Kareem Hunt, but all of these things combined, not talking talking about the individual, talking about Baker Mayfield, makes him an extremely dangerous quarterback in 2019 and one that I think could be top 5. And I'm going to put him right there at number 3 because it's going to be an excellent season for him. The hype train on Deshaun Watson got out of control last season at a few different points. When you looked at the average draft position of Deshaun Watson, he was going as the quarterback 2 in almost all formats of drafts. And I warned fantasy football owners, be careful. I know he had a really good small sample size in 2017, but he put up the type of pace that would have given him 50 passing touchdowns in a season, and I just didn't see him replicating that. Well, he didn't. Only 26 passing touchdowns last season. However, I'm going to leave him up here. One of the biggest issues with that was the offensive line. Deshaun Watson was consistently running for his life last season, or he wasn't running because he was on the ground. He didn't have nearly enough time, and he still put up decent numbers. DeAndre Hopkins still had a really good season, and even Lamar Miller had a good season by most standards. So when you look at all those things, I really think the Houston Texans are going to address this offensive line in the draft, upgrade the offensive line, beef it up a little bit, make it a lot easier for Deshaun Watson. And if they can get him to the point where he has a lot more time to throw, his ability to make plays with his legs, his ability to score some rushing touchdowns, and then, of course, his passing ability, all those things combined have him as a top 5 quarterback. He is definitely a guy that could throw 35 to 40 or 45 touchdowns in a season because of the weapons that he has around him. Will Fuller will be back and healthy. Cross your fingers. Kiki QT also there as well, playing out of the slot. Lamar Miller, at this point, it looks like he will be the starting running back. We'll see what happens. But with all those things being said, this is still a really good offense. It's about health, and it's about keeping Deshaun Watson upright. If both of those things happen, he's in for a really good season. You know, Aaron Rodgers gave us a little bit of a scare last season with that potential knee injury and what did end up being a knee injury. But even though he played on really only one healthy leg all season long, he played a lot better than most quarterbacks when they have 2 healthy legs underneath of them. So Aaron Rodgers has a great season last year, and he's kind of fallen to the wayside a little bit because of some of these younger, more exciting up-and-coming quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers is still Aaron Rodgers, and while he probably deserves to be a little bit higher in these rankings, I'm going to slide him in at number 5. He's got the track record, obviously, but what are we going to get in this new offense from Aaron Rodgers? What are we going to get in terms of his passing production? Jimmy Graham was supposed to be a big help for him last season. He didn't. Dramo Allison, he was supposed to be this breakout wide receiver too. He's back with the team, but after suffering an injury last year. Randall Cobb is now gone. Devontae Adams, as usual, will be there. And then hopefully Aaron Jones is utilized a lot better. He's a guy that really could help take a lot of pressure off of Aaron Rodgers. There's talk, too, that they might spend a first-round pick on one of the top couple of tight ends in this draft, whether it be Noah Fant, whether it be TJ Hawkinson. It doesn't matter. So they might try adding another weapon for Aaron Rodgers to utilize this season. Last year, a career low 2 interceptions, and again, that was done on one healthy leg. So we'll see what happens when he comes back. He's, like I said, still the Aaron Rodgers of old. He hasn't, in my opinion, he hasn't missed a beat. He was just injured last year and then obviously missed a good chunk of the season the year before that. So a full, healthy 16 games puts him back on the map. But you're going to be able to get probably a little bit of a discount on him in some leagues, depending on what kind of format you play in. But he's definitely a top 5 quarterback for me still. Russell Wilson's going to come in at number 6 for me, and he was my top-ranked quarterback heading into last season, and it didn't quite materialize. He had a much better second half of the season and played a lot better, but overall for the entire season, you felt a little disappointed. But should we have been? It wasn't really his production that bothered us. I mean, he had a career-high 35 touchdown passes. He still threw for 3,400 yards. The one thing, though, is it was just a lot less volume. They really got back to running the football last season, and he had the least amount of passing attempts since his sophomore year with the Seattle Seahawks. So what are we going to get from Russell Wilson this season? Well, I still think that volume isn't going to come back for him. He's not going back to 500 passing attempts like he did each of the prior 2 seasons, but I think he's still going to be right around where we saw him last year. Maybe a little bit more volume than that, though. Chris Carson, Rashad Penny, they're still going to lean on those guys to really push this team. It's really going to help, though, if they can get Doug Baldwin back for an entire healthy season. That would be really great for them to do that. Tyler Lockett with a breakout campaign last year. David Moore has shown to be very good in certain situations as well. This is still a very capable offense. So we'll see what happens with Russell Wilson, but he always has that upside, especially with his ability to create yards on the ground with his legs. That's what really helps him push up a little bit of upside and reaches all the way to number 6 here for me. Well, maybe we slept on Matt Ryan a little bit too much last season, as a lot of analysts out there didn't really have him inside that top 12 or very low on the low end of it, because Matt Ryan last season actually put together numbers that were comparable to his MVP campaign 2 years ago. He was back and he was much better last season. He's got one of the best receiving tandems in all of football, in my opinion. Calvin Ridley, Julio Jones, and a very underrated Mohamed Sanu all there with him in Atlanta. Now, the one thing is going to be, can they get a better run game this season? Tevin Coleman was really ineffective last year when he took over as the starter. A lot of people loved Tevin Coleman, and we thought this was going to be his coming out party, and it just didn't happen. So can Devonta Freeman be healthy all season long? If he can, that's a great help. That's a huge help for Matt Ryan in this offense. Ito Smith looked decent at times last year, but he didn't show us anything to believe that he's going to be a guy that can carry full workloads or anything like that. So the emphasis here is going to be the run game being healthy. If those things happen, then Matt Ryan could very well put up numbers very similar to what he did last year. Now, obviously last season he finished much higher than 7, but Aaron Rodgers, hopefully he will be back and fully healthy this season. Baker Mayfield will be up there now, so he gets pushed down a little bit, but I'm still expecting a very good season for him this year. Another name that's kind of going unnoticed now because of other names, and really a lot of people just didn't notice the campaign that he put up last season. And again, it was very similar to his MVP year a couple of years ago. So hopefully we get more of the same, but when you have wide receivers like that around you, it makes passing and it makes playing the game a whole lot easier. A lot of people are scared off by Cam Newton and his shoulder right now, but it appears he's going to be healthy heading into the 2019 season. It will continue to be the same story, though. What can he do on the ground to help prop up his value? Well, that's not going to go away anytime soon. Cam Newton isn't going to stop running the ball. He isn't going to stop scoring touchdowns on the ground. All those things will continue to happen, but they need to start getting him into a situation where he can be more successful as a passer. He's got good tools around him. Curtis Samuel is the guy that really broke out last season. DJ Moore could be on the breakout campaign this year. And obviously, of course, Christian McCaffrey does a whole lot for that offense there. So what are we going to get out of Cam Newton in 2019? Well, I think we get more than enough for him to be a top 12 quarterback. Obviously, if that shoulder injury pops back up, or if there's any other issues that he has that limit him, he could fall outside of that. But for right now, operating under the assumption he's going to be healthy for a full 16 games, you cannot leave Cam Newton outside of your top 12 players. Jameis Winston has a ton to prove this season. He has a ton to prove to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers front office, to the Tampa Bay fans, and of course, his new head coach, Bruce Arians. But a new head coach, Bruce Arians, is going to bring a whole new playbook with him, and a playbook that's going to be extremely friendly for Jameis Winston in terms of fantasy football numbers. He is going to have an opportunity to have a huge season, and I'm going to put him here at number 9 because I see that coming. Now, Jameis Winston's, again, playing for a lot this season. He needs a new contract. He probably wants to stay in Tampa Bay, I would assume, especially with Bruce Arians, but is it going to happen? I'm going to bet yes. Bruce Arians basically brought us Carson Palmer back from the dead, right? So he comes out to Arizona when Bruce Arians was out there, and Palmer was a significant fantasy football contributor for a couple of years. And Jameis Winston has a couple of the best weapons in all of football, and O.J. Howard at the tight end position if he's fully healthy, and then Mike Evans. Chris Godwin is a guy that you definitely need to keep your eye on, and then also have to give a shout out to Miguel here from the Fantasy Headliners because he loves himself some Justin Watson, so keep your eye on Justin Watson as well. Tampa Bay could use a little help in the run game, so we'll see what happens there, possibly in the draft. But maybe they run with what they already have. We'll wait and see what happens there. But an additional running back to help Ronald Jones could be a lot of help also for Jameis Winston. So Jameis Winston definitely a QB1 for me this season. I mean, he's going to throw his fair share of interceptions and he's going to have his fair share of roller coaster games, but I'm buying Jameis Winston for the ceiling because he will definitely bring that this year. Well, a lot of people had written Jared Goff off after his rookie year, including myself, but for the second straight year, he proves to us that he definitely belongs and he's one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. Now, it always helps when you play with a guy like Sean McVay, who for a majority of the time puts his players in the best situation to perform well, and you also have one of the best running backs in the league in Todd Gurley. But can we see a little bit of an expanded workload for Jared Goff in 2019? He finishes the quarterback 7 last year. I do have him a little bit lower than that, just because there are a couple of names I'm going to bump above him that weren't there last year. But with Jared Goff, maybe Todd Gurley, maybe his workload decreases next year. Maybe they put it on Jared Goff a little bit more and say, hey, we're really going to let the reins loose on you this season. We need to keep Todd Gurley healthy. We're going to focus on the passing game. We're going to minimize some of the attempts that we've had in previous years with Todd Gurley, and we're going to throw it more. If that happens, Jared Goff, who threw for 4,600 yards last season, could probably be in for the same, anywhere from probably 4,500 to 4,900 yards, but the touchdowns could end up going up. This is a guy that could potentially throw 35 to 40 touchdowns this next season, especially when you get a guy like Cooper Kupp back. You could tell last season when Cooper Kupp went down with his injury that the offense, it didn't quite run as smoothly as it had at the beginning of the season. Cooper Kupp does a lot of good things for that offense, and then when you have a guy like Brandon Cooks and Robert Woods, who's extremely underrated, you know, all those things together make Jared Goff an extremely enticing play, especially when you can get him after some of the bigger names coming off the board in your fantasy drafts. Again, some of that volume I expect to maybe increase next year. There are a couple of names that bump up in front of him this season, but he's still a top 12 quarterback, and he will finish as such in 2019. Drew Brees seemed well on his way to an MVP season, and then when the final weeks of the season got here, a lot of it seemed to come crashing down. Unfortunately, Drew Brees just couldn't finish the season and just couldn't close it out and ended up missing out on that MVP award. Here's the thing, though. Drew Brees is going to be back this year, and I think he's going to be even maybe a little bit better than what we saw last season. Last season, he did finish within the top 10 at quarterbacks. I'm a little bit lower than that this season, but you can't dispute the weapons he has around him. Obviously, Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara are huge. There's been some talks about Jared Cook potentially landing in New Orleans. We'll see how that plays out. I think Cameron Meredith coming back will be a huge help for him. Another season of Traquan Smith, that could help him growing there. So I think his weapons are going to be even better than what they were last season. And we'll see what happens with Mark Ingram being gone. They have signed Latavius Murray. I think that's a really good signing to continue running that type of offense that they have there with those two running backs. All in all, it's going to be a very balanced offense, but Drew Brees is Drew Brees. He's a top 12 quarterback in my opinion. I think there is a chance that he could at least compete for another MVP title next season. And even though the limelight is starting to close, even though the career is coming to a close here, he still has more than enough football left in him to give you a quarterback one season. We didn't quite get the season that we expected from Kirk Cousins, and we didn't quite get the season that we expected from that offense, unless you were surprised by Adam Thielen, or unless you were happy to finally have the Stephon Diggs breakout. Even though Diggs and Thielen were awesome last season, Kirk Cousins just didn't seem to be great. Not nearly as good anyway as Thielen and Diggs made it look like. So what happened there? Well, we're going to be looking at a new offense in 2019, a new game plan there, and I think another year to really gel with his team and his offense is going to do Kirk Cousins a lot of good. Not only that, but I think we're going to be looking at a team that is really going to focus on establishing the run with Dalvin Cook and making the offense run through them. Now, I know we don't always love that sentence or that phrase, establishing the run, but that's going to be good for Kirk Cousins this season. I definitely see a top 12 campaign coming. He just missed it last year, finishing as the QB 13. I'm going to bump him up inside that top 12 this season, though, because I think that new offense with a new game plan, Dalvin Cook being fully healthy, all of these things is going to be great for the Minnesota Vikings. I think they're going to be much better. They're going to address that offensive line here in the draft. They're going to try and beef that up just like the Texans are going to do for Deshaun Watson. The Minnesota Vikings are going to do the same thing for Kirk Cousins, and Kirk Cousins will give you a much more solid season in 2019. Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Fantasy Headliners. Really appreciate you checking out the episode and talking top 12 quarterbacks. And just a reminder, hit that subscribe button to become a part of Headliner Nation today. Hit the like button and also comment below with any questions that you have. One of the most interactive channels here on YouTube. You comment, we respond. We love Headliner Nation and we love interacting with you and talking football with you. So make sure that you help us out and allow us to talk football back. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode again, and we'll catch you on the next one.